Once I finished covering the Batman Arkham series on my channel around 2 years ago, I made one thing very clear. I said that I was happy with where the series was, and didn't want it to be continued past Knight, because the series was near flawless in my eyes and because a new Arkham game has a possibility of damaging a pristine series. If a new Arkham game comes out and it sucks, the previous games in retrospect can be tarnished. We saw this exact sentiment with Joker 2, a movie that people felt was so bad that it ruined the whole first movie for them. So to say that I was skeptical of a brand new Arkham game delegated to VR would be a massive understatement. But at Gamescom this year, I was able to try a demo of Batman Arkham Shadow, and to my surprise, it was exceptionally good. Speaking of that, I do want to say that while I'm going to do my best to look at this game through an unbiased lens, I was given an exceptional amount of special treatment leading to this game's launch that cannot be ignored. I'll talk about it more at the end of the video, but I was essentially given the game for free, a trip to Gamescom, a trip to Meta's offices in Seattle, and I was given 2 free headsets, the MetaQuest 3 and 3S. And the developers were asking myself and other YouTubers for feedback on the game and making changes based on that feedback. My goal here is to give a review of the game with my thoughts, specifically looking at the game both as a standalone product and as a console seller, because the console is the biggest barrier between Arkham fans and this new Arkham game. Batman Arkham Shadow takes place after the events of Arkham Origins and sees Batman trying to decipher the identity of the Rat King, and doing so exclusively on the MetaQuest 3. Fortunately, along with the release of Arkham Shadow, there is a new budget-inclined MetaQuest 3S. I've been using this headset for a few weeks now and can say that it's a great budget way to get into VR, but I do not recommend you get this headset for just Arkham Shadow. Arkham Shadow is a roughly 10-hour game, so I can't in good faith tell you to drop hundreds of dollars for that. But if you've been wanting to play a couple of VR games, I think it's a worthy purchase. I was actually going to get a Quest 3 last year to play Assassin's Creed Nexus, but held off because I was moving, so I can say that long before any interaction directly with Meta, I thought the Quest was a solid choice. The biggest factor being that it's wireless. But let's put a pin in that for now and answer the question on everyone's mind. Is Arkham Shadow good? Does it tarnish the Arkham legacy? Should Camouflage expect a pipe bomb in the mail? The answer is yes, no, and we'll see. Finally, as always, please watch more than just this review, and I stress this especially because there's a good chance you'll need to buy the headset too, so do as much research as you can. The biggest goal with a game like this is fundamentally to take an authentic Arkham experience and bring it to a different perspective. We saw a similar goal with Arkham Origins Blackgate, and that game, in my opinion, failed to nail the fundamentals of what made the Arkham games fun, and that undermined the enjoyability of everything else it tried to do. So if Batman Arkham Shadow wants to succeed, it needs to, at minimum, have the same competent mechanics as the third-person games, from the large ideas and gadgets to the minuscule quality of life features. Only once those fundamentals are nailed can the product attempt to contribute something new to the legacy of the series. It's important to remember that the Arkham legacy does not belong to Camouflage. They are guests in a house that Rocksteady built with their bare hands. Arkham Shadow isn't allowed to walk in and start tearing down walls, rearranging furniture. They need to respect the series they are stepping into. This is long-winded, but the point is that despite the insurmountable pressure, Arkham Shadow respects the series, the Arkham legacy, the spirit of these games, while offering new features and a new story that, at some points, were the highlight of the entire series. Every mechanic, character, location is designed specifically to fit within the established lore, and is treated with so much respect that, as a fan, I can only reciprocate and appreciate. When I was at the Meta offices, I watched in real time developers swapping between Arkham Shadow and Arkham City to ensure that the gameplay felt familiar, and that familiar feeling is important. It was not often when playing the game that I was unable to perform a move I wanted to. Sure, the controls were different, but said new controls were intuitive. In traversal, you need to grab your cape to begin gliding, so it makes sense that within combat, we have to grab one side of that cape and stun enemies with it. This intuitive design was present across the game, making it feel natural as a massive fan of the series. But let's zoom out and look at the presentation, because in virtual reality, it's a little different. In VR, there's nothing stopping you from getting up close and personal, and when the game is running entirely on a headset, things aren't going to look the same as a Red Dead 2, but I think that's pretty common knowledge. Where VR surpasses those other games is in Immersion. Despite the game's fidelity not being up to par for the PS5, I was wholly immersed the entire time, and when traveling within different areas, doors never took too long to open, which to me is long enough to remind me that I'm in a game. Compared to other VR games, it meets the bar, and while it isn't flawless, it certainly didn't have more bugs than any of the other VR games I've played. Despite being locked to the eyes of Batman, Arkham Shadow finds ways to maintain cinematic flair in its cutscenes, and with the different things you do throughout the campaign. I don't want to spoil too much, but the game does have some seriously interesting moments, and while I certainly don't mind just beating up thugs and solving crimes for a whole game when the mechanics are this good, the game keeps things varied. Much of the game will take place within Blackgate Prison, and most of this prison is interactable. I'll admit that there isn't the same amount of immersive sim elements you may find in other games, you can't pick up every single item, but you can pick up and interact with most of them, and the game is able to keep me immersed in the Batman experience, which matters more than if I can grab a police officer's gun mid-cutscene. Gameplay-wise, I found things to be smooth. I should mention that I never get nauseous when playing VR games, so take this with a grain of salt, but I never found myself dizzy, confused, or nauseous while playing, even with all of the comfort settings turned off. There are comfort settings for those who get queasy, but I don't think it's super necessary, as there isn't any massive heights or crazy locomotion, especially when compared to games like Resist, which are a roller coaster on a good day. Most of the game sees you investigating, solving puzzles, fighting bad guys in stealth and open combat, and exploring. The exploring is what you'd expect, and naturally gets better the more gadgets you unlock, but to me, the bread and butter is the combat, and funny enough, it's exactly where I thought the game would struggle the most. When making a VR Arkham game, combat is the first speed bump, rather, mountain to get over. How do you replicate free-flow combat where you pinball between enemies without disorienting the player, without making it overly complicated, and while maintaining an immersive level of control? The answer is as simple as it is ingenious. Simply look at an enemy and punch to lunge towards them, initiating a small combo consisting of a few hits, with the final hit knocking them down. From there, you can either turn and move towards the next enemy, or finish them off with a ground takedown. What the combat maintains more than anything is that while your hands might be a different controller, the moves are the same. A beatdown sees me, as the player, launching a flurry of fists towards an enemy the same way I would in the Arkham games. If I wanted to dodge behind an enemy by jumping over them, I could push the right stick, the same button for mantling. It's important that inputs all complete the same general actions because it means trying new things and learning the limits of the game is easy. Of course, jumping on top of an enemy would be pushing up on the right stick because in every other context, that's the input for climbing something. When in front of an enemy, as mentioned, you'll be tasked with completing a few select inputs. Maybe some jabs, a 3-hit combo, a right or a left hook, and these felt great in motion, but occasionally, my inputs would be, to me, read incorrectly. I would swear I landed the cleanest hook, but the game insists it was in the wrong direction. Now, for the sake of confirming this, I recorded myself playing because who knows, I could be fatigued and being sloppier than I realized, but no, it seems detection isn't perfect. Most of the time it is, but when it isn't, I feel myself being ripped out of my flow state in real time, and honestly, it fucking sucks. But I hope with further patches it gets better. Countering is done by extending your arm outward, and because attack warnings appear clearly, I was never hit by something I wasn't aware of, and that's thanks to the game's excellent audio. I was capable of keeping track of enemies despite not always having my eyes on them. You'll notice that there aren't any new enemies, which I feel is fine, because the classics are here, and they're given new life due to being in VR, but the free-flow combat is only half of the Arkham equation, with the Predator challenges being another fundamental Arkham Shadow needs to nail. Predator rooms are generally more difficult here because your view is limited to your eyes as opposed to the third-person perspective. Thankfully, this adds an even greater utility to vantage points, and there's a significantly longer planning phase to stealth where you are genuinely surveying the room, planning your attacks, and scaring the hell out of anyone else there. Stealth takedowns are done by reaching out and strangling the enemies from behind, and I'm gonna say it feels better here than in the third-person games because you can lunge from such a large distance that it feels like playing a Predator section as much as it feels like I'm playing as a killer in Dead by Daylight, playing with my food. You'll often fall into a loop of scouting an enemy, dropping down to take them out, quickly finding a grapnel, back to a perch, rinse and repeat. These stealth sections evolved plenty over the course of the game, and incorporate some of the classic mix-ups like thermal goggles and detective vision jammers. It's Arkham stealth at its finest, and that alone is excellent. The best part is, challenge maps make a return, 3 for combat and 3 for stealth, and they were a ton of fun to replay. Even if this game is a sequel to Arkham Origins, it's clear that the biggest point of inspiration was Arkham Asylum. Blackgate can often resemble Asylum, its winding paths somehow leading into each other, its consistent backtracking to previous areas to explore with new gadgets, the map that is so complicated you're better off not using it, and the enclosed nature makes this game equally claustrophobic. Much like Asylum, you'll find a series of puzzles in each area ranging from requiring a full consultation of the utility belt to simply asking the player to rip off a grate. These puzzles were fun, and I always felt rewarded for poking around, but don't expect these to be much of a head scratcher. They are on the same level as the Riddler trophies. Even the hardest puzzle right at the end of the game didn't take much thought, and executing the solution took much longer than actually piecing together what you're supposed to do. Much like other Arkham games, there are investigations, and while they were fun, the game actually allows you to put the final pieces together at times. And while it was entertaining, it was never hard. One of the first sees Batman trying to decipher where the Rat King is projecting his propaganda. Well, they need a projector, where else would they go? I like the idea, but the issue is that there was always one piece of evidence that to me was a complete dead giveaway. This also applied, unfortunately, to the biggest mystery of all. I'll speak carefully so as not to spoil anything, but the identity of the Rat King is a mystery that hangs over the entire story, and the process of meeting people and sussing out how they could be involved was well done. The game does a solid job of offering red herrings that make sense with the information you currently have, but eventually a pattern presents itself where there's a prime suspect, all fingers point to them, and then you find a new piece of information that exonerates them. The problem problem is that the actual Rat King is abundantly obvious roughly 3 hours into the 10-hour game, and the one thing that kept me guessing was the hope that it wasn't who I thought it was. To make an obvious comparison, yeah, this mystery and reveal is better than Arkham Knight, and once I got past who it actually was, the climax of the story was quite good. And there's one specific twist that I think was executed masterfully. While we're on the subject of picture-perfect scenes, there is one scene that I can't spoil that is genuinely one of the greatest scenes in the entire Arkham series. This review is coming out before a lot of people have finished the game, so I'll just say, for those that are watching after playing, you know what I'm talking about. It was the perfect showcase of Camouflage's mindset going into this game. It was a scene that respects the legacy, the spirit of Arkham, and their obsession with the game's lore allowed them to present this scene with the confidence needed to be within the top 5, maybe even top 3 moments of the entire series, alongside that third Scarecrow segment in Asylum and the Mr. Freeze fight in City. It was that good. It's a scene that encapsulates the game's themes, Batman's character arc, foreshadows the Rat King's identity, and ends with the game's best boss fight. Boss fights across the game were solid enough, and got better as I progressed. I believe part of this is due to upgrades. Boss fights will see you working with a new gadget, and these were mostly good. I think the first boss fight wasn't all that great, but the second, a fight against the head of Tiger's Presence in Blackgate Bolton, was excellent. This was a fight showcased in the trailer, and is a perfect one-on-one battle. It's early enough that it won't use all of your gadgets, but it's a test of the combat fundamentals that have been built up over the course of the hours leading to the fight. I couldn't figure out where to mention it, but the game does offer a stationary mode, meaning it can be played sitting down, and while the game certainly is enjoyed that way, I found as far as immersion goes, standing was by far the best way to play the game. When I talk about VR stuff though, please bear in mind that I am not completely familiar with VR games, though I have been trying. I had a PSVR 1 when it first launched, and I enjoyed Skyrim VR, Beat Saber, and Superhot, and a few weeks before this review, Meta sent me a MetaQuest 3S I've been playing games on. And just to give you an idea of my taste, my favorite games I played so far were Waltz of the Wizard, Assassin's Creed Nexus, and Resist. But I also replayed the classics like Superhot and Job Simulator to refamiliarize myself within the medium. All of those games were great, with Assassin's Creed Nexus being my favorite so far, but I truly believe that Arkham Shadow is now the best VR game I've played. Do note that I have not finished Bone Labs, and I haven't tried other games like Half-Life Alyx, which I've heard is really good. But what makes me most relieved is not that this is a good VR game. Camouflage has made good VR games. Instead, I was concerned that this would feel too alien and not like an Arkham game. A series' identity is defined by its creators. If Rocksteady says a looter shooter without stealth and free flow combat is an Arkham game, then unfortunately, it's an Arkham game. But when a developer unaffiliated with Rocksteady comes along and tries to build upon the series, they must follow strict rules, and it's not their place to come in and change what defines the series. Instead, Camouflage has paid so much attention to the details and has respected not just what Arkham is for Rocksteady, but what Arkham is to the fans, while adding things that simply improve, not redefine, aspects of the series. Being able to replay chapters is awesome. Many boss fights are elevated through the VR medium, and adding to Batman's character arc in a way that reinforces the themes of the already released games allows this game to miss the trap of playing things too safe. As far as an Arkham game goes, it's hard to directly compare it to the rest of the series because it is so different, but I found myself by the end of my playthrough seriously considering if I liked it more than Asylum or Origins. It's a damn good game, and I highly recommend it. However, if you're looking for an immersive sim, something where you can interact with every little object, you won't find that here. But to return to an earlier talking point, you'll probably need to buy a Quest as well. I played the game on both the Quest 3 and 3S, and I think if you're planning to play just a few games on the Quest, you can comfortably go for the 3S. I think the mixed reality stuff is better on the 3, but if you're like me and are only concerned with the games, then you'll be fine. The 3S has a lower resolution, but I didn't notice it unless I was specifically looking for it, and I think purely for gaming, the 3S is the way to go. But if you imagine you'll be doing a lot of VR, it may be worth it to spring for the 3. The default headband for the 3 and 3S did eventually become uncomfortable after an hour or two, so you may want to upgrade to the Elite strap as well, which honestly should just be bundled with the console. And the other upside of the 3S is that it includes Arkham Shadow, so if you're an Arkham fan that is interested in this game and no others, and you are comfortable spending the cash, then the 3S is the best possible use of that money. Plus, there are some other great games I've been enjoying too. Arkham Shadow specifically did run better on the 3 compared to the 3S, but I think the performance differences aren't enough to justify upgrading if you're only going to play 1 or 2 games on it. While we're on the subject of performance, I need to mention that stutters and frame drops were here for me across my playthrough. For others I talked to, it ran fine, but I was just unlucky, and for some reason I ran into consistent stuttering issues that, while not game-breaking, were intrusive enough that I feel it would be dishonest to not mention them. Now granted, I have been in communication with Ryan Payton, the founder and studio head of Camouflage, and he's made it clear that Camouflage fully intends on supporting the game long after its initial launch to improve performance and the inclusion of new content like a character viewer, additional challenge maps, and more, all of which will be dictated dictated by player feedback. The passion Camouflage as a team have shown thus far has me confident that the game will continually improve. Everything from the present lore in this game to the interviews oozes passion. So while I think the game is definitely worth the money, headset excluded, I think it's going to get better, and that's always good. Finally, to go back to the special treatment, I was flown out to Seattle to play the game, give feedback on the game, and was given a free MetaQuest 3 and 3S, a free early copy of the game, and I was also flown out to Germany to attend Gamescom and play the game there. These experiences were invaluable to me, and I'm very grateful not just to Meta for doing all of that, but to you guys. Because without you watching all my videos and sharing them, these companies would have no idea who I am. My thoughts here are my own, and are honest, because my loyalty is always to you. These companies and trips, while nice, don't pay the bills. You guys do, by watching, so you're the priority, and I'm so grateful for your support. Have you played Batman Arkham Shadow? What do you think of it? Let me know down below, and again, as always, please make sure you watch more reviews to have the most informed purchase. Thank you all so much for the love and support, and thank you so much to our patrons for supporting the channel. I hope you all have a good day, and take care.
The cops, the courts, the clique. The rats failed to kill Commissioner Gordon, but they've crippled the GCPD. They failed to kill DA Harvey Dent, but they made a mockery of justice. Black